Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. This week, we finish up our two-part series on the best lessons learned this year, as told by you, the members of the Beginner Photography Podcast community. Hey, I am Raymond Hatfield. I'm your host, and I'm also a wedding photographer right here in Indianapolis. And as we get close to the end of the year, I always love to look back and reflect. And I think in many ways, this year is still very reminiscent of last year. And in other ways, it's total opposite. But I think one thing remained a pillar, and that is simply your dedication to learning photography. I know that in many of you, 2020 sparked a creative fire within you that only photography could satisfy. And if that's you and you're listening right now, I just want to say thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Like you, everyone I interview in today's Community Spotlight recap started listening to the podcast. And then they participated in the podcast community. They were open, they were vulnerable, they shared their photos, taking feedback, making adjustments, and then coming back to share ever more impactful images time and time again. Now, if you're listening and you're not part of the Beginner Photography Podcast community on Facebook already, well, we'd love to have you. You can search for Facebook. You can search Facebook for Beginner Photography Podcast. You'll see the group right there. Or there's a link on the homepage of beginnerphotographypodcast.com if that is easier for you. Now, today in this recap interview, I think that you are going to leave inspired by your fellow community members, from studying classic films for inspiration to the power of print. But first up, we're talking to Erika Greco, talking about the journey of confidence, camera settings, and why she won't be upgrading her gear anytime soon. Let's get into it. Wow. So let me think about that for a second. So the standards had been changed. So photography got harder for you. In terms of, was it a personal thing? Were you just feeling like, oh, wait, I'm not as good of a photographer as I think I am? Or were you trying something that you were seeing and realizing that it was harder than you expected? How so?
Yeah, so I think that part of it is insecurity, because you play the comparison game, even though you know you're not supposed to. Don't
Right.
compare your journey or your life to someone else's. Like, we still all do it, and I think that there's a place for that. It made me improve. It definitely made me improve. Where if you just don't look at anybody else's work or don't compare yourself ever, do you really know in which direction to go to improve your work? But there can be joy lost in comparison, for sure. So yeah, I think that part of it is just all of a sudden I realized all the problems, or all the shortfalls, or all the areas I could improve when I started seeing people who were more advanced and more skilled and more experienced than me, and was really exposed to them just on a regular basis. Versus, like I said, in high school, it's just like, wow, I developed a picture. This is awesome.
Yeah. So today, I'm sorry, go on.
And I think part of it was also making the transition to digital, and relearning some of the basics after I put the camera down for a little while, and then the transition to digital. And there's just a lot more options. There's a lot more buttons to learn. So there was some personal, kind of personal growth that had to be made, as far as, being secure enough to have some confidence in my work. Confidence is always an issue for me. But then there was technical growth to be made too, to make that transition to digital and just kind of get back in the groove of things.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything from a technical standpoint in particular that you can think of?
Oh gosh, like focus, like having things be in focus was like an adventure.
Isn't that so funny?
You take a picture on your tiny little screen. You're like, yes, I nailed it. And then you get it to a computer and make it bigger, and you're like, oh man, that's completely out of focus. So yeah, focus, lighting, learning flash. I never did flash in high school, and yeah, I think those are probably the biggest things: is consistent focus, consistent lighting, and then with part of consistent lighting being how to use artificial lighting, when that natural light isn't an option, or isn't your best option, or isn't the vision you have in your head.
Yeah, right. Yeah, all three of those. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think when it comes to focus, I don't think that you're alone there. That's definitely something that is very challenging. And then I think the world of mirrorless kind of changed everything again. I feel like everybody
I
really
have.
got used to. Oh, you haven't made the switch yet?
No.
Oh,
My
good.
camera is still big and heavy. I can't do it. Look, I resisted digital for a while. Mirrorless is gonna
Gonna
take
have to
even
wait.
longer. So
Yeah.
no, I feel
Hey,
like
I
I'm
mean,
just
if it works though, if
yeah.
it works, like why change it up? And if you don't rely on these tools for, you know, so one of the reasons why I switched from Canon to Fuji was just simply I felt like it helped me do my job better, and that was it. Right? It was a smaller camera. It kind of helped me blend in a little bit.
Mhm.
I could be a little less conspicuous. And on a dance floor, like that's what you want. You don't want to. At least I didn't want to be the guy with the giant camera and the flash in everybody's face, right?
Mhm.
I don't think that if it was just me personally and my personal photography, I'm not sure that I ever would have changed systems. So I don't blame you there.
Yeah.
I would stick with it until the shutter just falls right off the camera.
Basically. And plus I'm like, I've spent enough money on all this stuff.
Right?
I'm gonna keep it for a while. But I think that relates actually to like some really good advice that helped me that came from your podcast. And it was about like not gear chasing, like making sure if you're buying something new, that you know exactly why you're buying it and exactly what hole it's going to fill for you or what gap it's going to fill for you. And to me, like mirrorless at this point, I don't even have a full frame camera. I have a crop sensor camera, and the only reason I would change it would just because like I don't know, like an illogical like little itch for some new technology, and that's not a good reason to spend a bunch of money. It's it doesn't feel a need for me. It doesn't feel a gap, and that was really good advice I got actually from your podcast that really
Good.
helped. So every piece of gear, every lens that I bought, and every piece of gear that I wanted for months, at least months, and I know exactly why I bought it, and that is because of you.
Yes, I love to hear that. That is so awesome.
So right now I have a Tamron G2 24 to 70 and 70 to 200. Um, and then I have a Sigma 150 to 600, which is my newest purchase.
Wow.
And that's for birds. And that has been so cool and so fun. And it's funny how like photography has actually made me get more exercise because yeah, I'll put on like miles and miles and miles with that lens, and it's like 6 pounds. So it's not light. So I get a bit of a workout. I have figured out that the hand I support that lens with, like you can visibly see that the muscle on that arm is stronger, even though it's my left hand, even it's my non-dominant hand. So I was like, why is my bicep on my left arm stronger when I'm very much right-handed? And we're like, oh, it's because I hold that big lens, that big heavy lens.
That is so funny.
With
That is
my left
great.
hand. But yeah, it's like it's helped me get outside more. It gets me more exercise. So there's so much value, in my photography, even if I, don't try to turn it into a business. And yeah, instead of investing in that full frame camera, just because I was supposed to, because it's somebody else's, journey that they made up, somebody else's box that I don't have to, or somebody else's plan I don't have to subscribe to, because I didn't do that. I was able to, like I said, get some killer lenses instead that I've had a great time with. I mean, I've started to find like where all the bald eagles are locally, and that's been really fun and really cool to see, and gotten super into birds. I had a painter, I had an artist, a painting artist, contact me for about a picture I took of a group of roseate spoonbills, which are these crazy looking pink birds that are so cool, asking me if she could paint it. And she said if the painting sells, she'll send me a commission. So yeah, like I wouldn't, and it was because I got out because I had this super cool new lens. I couldn't have done that with just because I upgraded to a full frame camera because somebody else said I should.
Right. And because of the crop factor, you'd actually be further away. So the photo wouldn't be as impactful with a full frame camera. So that's even better.
Yeah. I mean, I love all the lenses that I've invested in, but like I said, I made sure I wanted them. They were in my Amazon cart for a very long time before I pulled the trigger, and that was really good advice. And I use and abuse them, take them everywhere. and really, yeah, really get a lot of enjoyment out of the things that I have chosen to invest in.
That's good. I love to hear that. One of the things I see often is, in like camera or photography buy sell trade groups, is always like people think that it's this badge of honor when they go to sell a camera, and it's like there's only 1,000 shots on it, and it's like, what? Like, how is that a good thing? That means that you didn't use it at all. Like, we should be praising the people who have 600,000 shots on their cameras. You know what I mean? But
one of my gears, it's probably not good, but one of my gears sticks a little bit because it's got sand in it, because I've taken it to the beach.
On one of your lenses?
On my camera.
Oh.
On my camera. I don't think I've ever taken one of my more expensive lenses to the beach. My camera and a cheap lens will go in the beach. I've done a model shoot out at the beach, and as well as done some astrophotography out there when the Milky Way has been visible. So that's super fun. And yeah, still have there's a little bit of sandiness in one of the gears on my camera, but I wear that like a badge of honor. It means that I have used it. Oh my gosh, when I did the beach shoot where I was shooting models, it was the craziest sight. I had my camera in one hand, though we were in the waves, so I had a flash on a flash stand in the other hand, and I was just trying to balance myself like in a low squat position, because the model was like kneeling on the ground, low squat position, and I'm trying to get her getting hit by a wave, like the wave like crashing over her, but that also means that I'm getting hit by a wave. And I at one point wiped out, got knocked over by one of these waves. Luckily was able to like hold the camera and the flash stand high enough up in the air to save the camera and stuff. But yeah, I mean, which some people, would think is crazy, like, why are you standing in the water with your camera? You could get your gear wet. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do with it if not? Like, it's not, I didn't buy it to leave it in the bag and sit on a shelf. So I definitely, my camera's gone to the beach, in the water, like in and out of suitcases. I'm a little rough on it, probably.
Well, thank goodness for those big lens muscles that helped you, hold everything out of the water.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of people talking about switching to mirrorless these days. I'm not entirely sure that if Erika had switched to a lighter mirrorless system, that she would have had that amazing strength. Another reason not to upgrade, am I right? All right, next we got up Shane Wilkie, who talks about finding his inspiration through the world of film legends. What are the elements of a shoot that you want to go particularly well?
The ones I'm definitely hoping for, I've had cameras with video just die on me, on something break, and I feel like it's just a thing with me and electronics, and they break, and I never want something to happen to the camera, like, oh my God, guys, my camera isn't working.
Right.
Whereas I feel like that's something like, or I can control other things. Like, you can't, obviously there's some things that just, nature, right? Like with the weather, you're never going to be in control of that. But as far as interactions with the couple and being like planning for the shoot and being prepared, that's on me. But if the camera just, I don't know, says nope today. And I say that because I'm shooting on a Rebel T5.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely know the feeling of wanting a better camera, but hey, this is what I have. So maybe it's that punk rock side of me from playing in punk bands. I'll just make do with what I got and use it to the best of its ability.
I think when it comes to like being in that situation, I think that's something that I probably worried about a lot, in the beginning as well. Mm-hmm. Like, what if I'm out and the camera just dies? Like, what do you do? And I think that there's this idea that you want to appear like super professional and like that you got it all together, and that if anything goes wrong, you're going to be able to solve it. But, I mean, even if you watch, I don't know, professional sports, like people get taken out of the game like all the time, like these things happen. Mm-hmm. I think if you were just honest about it and you're like, you're not going to believe what happened. Like, my camera just died on me. I think that there's going to be some empathy there. And obviously if you just take it and you're like, look, here's what I'm going to get you back in front of the camera and we're going to do this proper, in a week
Yeah.
or 2 weeks or something, I think you should be all right. Like, I don't want you to stress about that or worry about that too much. Because I mean, that is a terrifying thought, but I think that you'll be all right. I feel like you'll be able to kind of talk your way out of it. You'll be okay. I want to know, like, where do you find inspiration? You know, when it comes to photography, there's a million places. I've heard people say that they get their inspiration for photos like through music, and like that is a totally foreign idea to me. So when it comes to inspiration for you, where does it come from?
A lot of this sounds kind of funny to say. A lot of what I see, like on like obviously the cliche thing to say is Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it is like other people's photos. But I've been like a lot of the inspiration lately has just been wanting to document life and just being inspired to help others and serve others with photography. And maybe not so much going and scrolling on Instagram and playing that comparison game as much as, hey, what can I do to make more people happy and feel good and want to work with me?
Mm-hmm.
And the inspiration there has been, I guess, from a technical standpoint, that's has been a lot of Stanley Kubrick films.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really like. I guess this is kind of side tangent. I was told to watch his films by a friend when I was getting into photography, and like, if you want to learn composition and lighting, go back and watch some of them. So I went on this. My wife and I, we binged watched like The Killing, Paths of Glory, Doctor Strangelove, like the old ones.
Sure.
And the inspiration for types of shots to get in those movies completely blew me away. In his use of lighting and composition, you never watch a Kubrick film and at any point your eye wanders and wonder where you should be looking.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everything is so intentional, and I really, that's been an inspiration, as to like, how can all my shots be very intentional and you're not left wondering where to look when you see the photo.
Has that been challenging for you?
It can be, because sometimes I feel like when I'm looking at the photo, my eye will go to where I want it to go. Like, oh, this is where I want it to end up. But naturally, it doesn't land there. So then sometimes I'll ask a second opinion, say like, hey, where does your eye land on this? Because it's been a worry of mine since someone who I looked up to in photography, one of the first times I went out shooting with them, I took this shot of this coastline. I was so excited about it. And I showed him the back of the camera, and he's just like, what's that a picture of? And I was like, got it.
Of course.
But it made me think that I wasn't intentional enough with telling the viewer the story that I want to tell.
Uh-huh.
And it then turned into, okay, well, how can I work on that? And how do I learn and grow? And then it was just, from then on, that's what led me to watch a lot of the Kubrick films, because I feel like I can look at photography and see other people's photos and get inspiration for like that sort of thing. But I find I could compare myself to it, or I could be biased when I want it to look like that, where it's a little harder for me to make a bright, warm, colorful photo look like a black and white film that's in standard definition, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
I really like taking inspiration from some other avenue in my interest and then applying it to something else. Like an example, I guess, is just, I really like really symmetrical landscape photography. I don't like things being off and unbalanced, and I take that and apply it to when I'm shooting, say, a couple. I want photos to have really nice balance and be somewhat symmetrical.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that in your photos, is that they're very either clean or, like you said, symmetrical. You know, oftentimes I think I'll look at like a new photographer's work, and I kind of asked that same question of like, what am I supposed to be looking at here? Like, what exactly is this a picture of? But so far, your photos, you do a fantastic job of either filling the frame or like, I think just being aware of your surroundings to use something like a path as leading lines or to use a horizon as, again, leading lines to a head or something like that. And so exactly what you're saying, like what you hope to accomplish, like I see it like starting to develop. So
Oh,
I think you're on the right
awesome.
path. Yeah, you just have to
Awesome.
continue doing that. And I think whatever you feel, like whatever you sense kind of around you, just keep diving into that, because I think that's going to be your thing. That's going to be your calling card. That's going to be able to help you get to exactly what it is that you want to do. If you are a part of the Beginner Photography podcast community and you are actively posting photos in there, I got to tell you, I cannot wait for the day where you can look back at your work that you posted in the group and see that clear progression to where you are now. It is a transformative experience for sure. And here we have Elizabeth DeVoe, who shares why exactly she doesn't want to niche down. During your journey here, like while you've been learning, I want to know, is there anything that you've been taught or that you've heard that you thought to yourself, this doesn't make any sense, or I don't think that this applies to me, or anything that you have felt is wrong information, if that makes sense?
I was worried I wouldn't have an answer for that, but I do. I think, and I don't remember who this interview was with recently that I listened to, but having one very specific niche is something that concerns me. Like feeling like I have to choose something, because I think my heart is pulled in a couple of different directions with it. Like I have like my intimate portraits is something that I really love doing. I would love to get into elopements, but I also don't want to be tied down to those things. And I feel like a lot of times you hear photographers say like you have to find your niche to be successful. And so the couple of times that I've heard other photographers be like, no, I do this, 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 and this, like gives me some comfort, because I don't want to be tied down to just like one or two different things. Like I know like specializing in a couple of things is very important. That way you can get better and better at it. But also there's so much to photograph. Like I don't want to be tied down to just one thing.
Of
So I think
course.
that's one big thing I've been thinking about.
Okay, I think that's fair, and I think that a lot of new photographers feel a very similar way, because so many photographers do say that exact same thing, and myself to a degree. I've said that as well plenty of times. So tell me, like, what is it that scares you most about that, or about the idea of that?
I think just being limited. And I guess maybe I said scared, but maybe it's just like a concern that I just don't want to be limited to that. Like I mentioned before, I kind of like to jump, like I'm a very restless person. And so if I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, I'm gonna get a little restless with it. And I guess I'm just hoping that if I do have to stick, or not have to, but if I do end up sticking with one or two niches or specific things that I photograph, that there's enough variation in it to, does that make sense, to keep me engaged or to keep me
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, next question here. What's your end goal with photography?
I am very inspired by, oh my goodness, I should have written his name down. You'll probably recognize it. He does elopements as well as like the boudoir. And he has such a unique style. He also does tattooing on the side. I'll have to find his name.
Is it Dylan Howell?
No.
No.
That's not his name. I'll find it for sure.
Okay. Did I interview them on the podcast?
I think so.
Okay.
Sure. But anyway, I'll have to find it.
Okay, anyway.
Chewy. No, maybe not. Anyway, his name is Chewy. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I think. But he does elopements that kind of turn into more intimate sessions. And like that's something I'm very drawn to. So my end goal honestly is like I've loved I hesitate to call it boudoir, but the intimate portraits, the elopements, like the kind of smaller, more like emotional stuff is really what I've been
You're about
But
to
I
get some
didn't
pup
want
kisses.
to. So that would be, if I had an end goal in mind, like right now, I'm not saying that it won't change. That would be it. Is heading toward the intimate or elopement like kind of world.
Do you see yourself leaving teaching?
I would like to. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So
that would be the end goal. I would like to, again, I've only been doing this a few months, so I don't want to like speak too much for myself right now.
of course.
But it seems to be going in a direction that puts that in the realm of possibilities.
Okay, so I don't know if you recognize this or not, but knowing that you've entertained the idea of leaving teaching, and when I asked you what it is that, what's your end goal, what is it that you want to shoot, you only really mentioned one thing, and that was elopements that turned into intimate portraits, right? I think that obviously, I was going to say, if you have no intentions of leaving teaching, then there's no need to niche down at all. The only reason why niching down is, I think, recommended is not so much that you can get better at one specific thing, but when you're known for that one thing. Like if you only photographed headshots of CEOs, just an example here, who do you think a business is going to call? Do you think they're going to call somebody who does a little bit of families, a little bit of weddings, a little bit of mini sessions, and then sometimes they do headshots? So from a business perspective, that's all that it is, right? You don't buy a Coke because you want a Sprite.
Yeah.
You buy a Coke because Coke does one thing and it does it well, and it knows what it is. Now, from personal experience, I can tell you, I mean, I shoot weddings. I market myself as a wedding photographer. I'll shoot anything. Like, if my neighbors want family photos, I'll go photograph that. Am I going to photograph my kids? Of course I'm going to photograph my kids. I'm not just going to look at them and be like, sorry, only weddings and engagements, guys. No photos today.
See you later.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that concern that you have, I wouldn't worry about it too much. You'll always find a space to be able to photograph whatever it is that you want. And legitimately, my recommendation is for anybody who's been shooting less than 5 years is to literally take every single opportunity that you have to photograph anything, whatever it is, food, commercial, real estate, wedding, whatever it is, take that. Because I think right now, while your heart is telling you like elopements and intimate portraits are my thing, there's scientifically, there's just no way that you know for sure. I mean, until you photograph everything. You could find that architecture photography is your thing. You might figure that out. So I would encourage you, don't try to limit yourself right now. If that thing comes up, you're gonna find it, and then you'll just go down that path.
You're absolutely right. I think one thing that not stresses me out, but that I think about when it comes to that, that kind of puts it at the forefront of my mind is one of the other biggest things I struggle with, which is social media. And you go to these photographers' pages and everything is so consistent and like their style is very clear. And like you go to my page and it's got like it's from the beginning of my painting journey about 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Like it's got my first picture from then to the last photo I took, and it's just a hodgepodge of everything. And I'm always like, this doesn't look appealing to probably anybody but me because it's my personal journey. But like there's no style. There's a leaf on this photograph, a train on this one, and a person on this one because I'm taking pictures of everything. But I remember one thing I heard somebody say was like, post the things that you want to take. And so even if you're photographing everything, like advertise or post the ones that you want to continue taking.
Yeah.
Which I struggle with.
Again, I don't mean this to downplay your skills and your abilities. I think you're just still very new in this whole journey. Absolutely. And it's not something that you could possibly know. You know what I mean? Like unless you could tell me, I only shoot elopements for couples between 28 and 40,
Here's the thing, Raymond.
in
I've never even shot an elopement. I'm saying that just because that's what I want. Like, that's what my
no,
heart
of
wants. I've
course.
never even done it.
Yes.
So how can I
And
say
again,
that? You're
exactly. And
right.
that's what I'm saying. There's no like why, like how do you expect to have some sort of cohesive social media
Absolutely.
presence when you haven't figured out the one thing that lights you up the most that you want to photograph? So
You're
I
right.
challenge you to just get off social media. Just say forget social media for now. Don't even worry about it, you know?
Absolutely.
If you are listening right now and you too are worried about finding a cohesive style, quote unquote, I want to give you that exact same challenge. Just get off social media for a little while and just focus on your own photography journey. Okay, here we have John Kenny, and we explore finding your style a little bit deeper.
There's another photographer who I was hoping to do a workshop with last year that got obviously cancelled, called Rory Lewis. I don't know if you've heard of him as well.
I'm not familiar.
He's a celebrity and royal portrait photographer. He's done a lot of work with the photographing the British and Italian armies and celebrities. So he does actors' headshots as well as portraits. And I watched an interview with him by the British Journal of Photography. And it was really interesting, like to see where he gets his influences from, and like Renaissance art, that sort of thing, rather than other photography. So it was just like a different piece of the toolkit, really, somewhere else that I had never thought to look for inspiration. Like to see how, obviously, I'd heard of Rembrandt lighting, but never actually connected the idea that it was from Rembrandt's paintings. That's how little my knowledge was. So it was really interesting to then look in that direction to see what you can take from there. Like what is it that you like about that sort of thing? Can you replicate that sort of light or that sort of composition, I suppose, in your own work? And I know from style or individual style is a big thing that everyone seems to worry about. And I think like when you're getting all these different influences, different building blocks, that's pulling things from different areas. That's how you sort of try and build your own style, I suppose.
Right. Do you think
sense?
It does? But I'm interested to hear your perspective on style. I guess first question: do you think that you have a style?
No.
Okay, perfect. So then, do you think that style is manufactured? Do you create your style, or do you think that style just comes up naturally?
I think style should come from yourself. I think there's a big danger that's been spoken about by a lot of photographers. I think Dan Milner mentions it, like the influence of likes and Instagram. So if you get into it too early and start worrying about likes, you sort of only post images that you get liked. You're posting for other people, then you're making work for other people, and you're not really it's homogenizing everything, rather than creating something different. And so in that respect, I think style could come from an external source, but I don't think then it's it's not going to be as strong because it's not coming from yourself then, really.
Oh.
I think you might have it for a bit, but then I think eventually it might be something that you come to look back on and think, well, this wasn't for me, or it could wear out if trends change on Instagram and what have you.
Yeah. It's funny, I was thinking back to my first wedding that I ever shot solo not too long ago. And I remember meeting with the couple, and I remember thinking, like, I have enough of an understanding of Lightroom on how to make things look different. So I asked the couple, I was like, what are your favorite colors? What are the colors of the wedding? And they told me it was like teal and purple or something like that. And I was like, okay. I was like, do you want me to edit your photos in a way that would reflect, your wedding colors. And they were like, absolutely, that'd be great. That would be absolutely wonderful. And I remember thinking, sweet, I got this. And I went to go edit all of their wedding photos. And at the time, I'm thinking to myself, this is awesome. I think this might be my thing. Like, I'll be able to do custom edits on every single wedding, that I do, and tailor each wedding edit to the individual couple. And now I look back at those photos and they just look like dead zombies, like the skin is green and the shadows are purple, and it just doesn't look very good. So like, I totally understand, where you're coming from there, where it's like, if you try to manufacture a style, it just comes off as inauthentic, and it's not going to work. It's not going to be your own, no matter how hard you tried. And I think that, like, if you want zombie looking photos, I think that it did a pretty good job, but that doesn't mean that overall that the photos are good. So I get that. I gotta think about that. You made me think about that. I like that. Where do you get your inspiration for photos?
At the moment, it's I'm looking more at portrait photographers rather than I did get like a small book on Caravaggio's artwork, but it's more words than pictures. So I'm like quickly looking through it to find the pictures to see how people are arranged, like the sort of expressions, and that's directly stolen from Rory Lewis's. He did a series of books with actors, not books, pictures with actors, where the inspiration was taken from famous pieces of art and then tried to recreate it with actors, sort of thing.
That's awesome.
So it's looking at and then recently black and white photography as well has become a real interest. There's a photographer who, again, I should, if I'd had any sort of education or looked into the industry before, someone that I should have known about, called, I think he's Dr. Andy Gotts.
Another one I'm not familiar with.
He's, I think he's a celebrity photographer again, but his thing is that he doesn't retouch portraits, so it's all quite real. There's no like skin softening or that side of things. It's all very textured and emotional, I suppose. He's got some outstanding pictures of some great celebrities like Harrison Ford pulling funny faces, that sort of thing. Just stuff that you would never expect to see, and you would think, well, if you were to ask someone to do that, there's got to be a real level of trust, sort of thing, before someone would do that on camera. So it's really exploring more on that side of things. But for me, for my development, I think it's one of the things I've still yet to do is ask a stranger for a portrait outside. So it's just pushing myself to do things which are uncomfortable, I suppose, or different, and then to try and take lessons from there, either on how to interact with people or how to actually get the shot that looks good.
Pushing yourself to do something different. How cool is that? Next up, we got Magda Stolte, and in this snippet right here, she shares her story of finding her voice through specialty lenses. Yeah, fun stuff. Yeah, I mean, when I go back, and I think if anybody looks at your photos, they go through your Instagram feed, what you see is that, like, these aren't just photos that came out of the camera. Like, there's a lot of work that went into these photos, and I love that, like, that adds like a production value to your images, with the additional colors, with the interesting spots of focus that you're able to choose. And as you said, it's like this really dreamlike type photo. I want to talk about so let me formulate this question in my head here real quick. With just traditional photography, learning the settings and getting an interesting photo can be difficult enough as it is. So when you add, I guess, why did you decide to add this additional creative element on top. Did you feel like your photos were missing something, or when you found it, you thought, I want to go all in on this? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. So I never saw myself as a creative person. And so I thought that my photos were definitely missing something. So to answer your question, it's both. At first, I was like, I love this look. I want to achieve it. So then I started doing that. But my photos definitely lacked that creativity, I thought. Any Lens Baby product will give you that instant creativity to a photo. I mean, you attach one of these lenses and it's like create something so different. So I think it's great for my creativity.
Mm-hmm. What about like today? Like, so when you first got Lens Baby, obviously there's quite a learning curve. But today, when you go out and shoot, do you find yourself pre-visualizing the photo in your head as for what it would look like through a Lens Baby, or are you just building compositional elements and then seeing what happens with a Lens Baby lens?
So I never used to really visualize my photos. I feel like I learned to do that, and just like recently I started visualizing more, because I would just shoot everything I see when I first started. But now I have these like ideas, and with the Lens Baby, it's sometimes hard to like visualize something, but I do get these ideas, and then I'm like, oh, this light is gorgeous. I wonder what it's going to look like with the Lens Baby on. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the lenses create like amazing flares, at like golden hour, and it's just different than it would with a traditional lens.
Okay, I see. That makes sense. You know, one thing that I want to dive deeper into more, not only with you, but like everybody on the podcast, is that something that we talk a lot about is style, you know, and I guess that's kind of what I was trying to get at with, I believe 2 questions ago, talking about, you know, your images don't look like they just came straight out of camera. Your images have a style, you know. Do you think that, again, trying to phrase this question here so that it comes out right, I'm trying to get at building your style, is how this came about, you know, because a lot of your style is, I don't want to say that it's dependent on Lens Baby, but you lean into it, which I love. Do you think that the way that you shoot today would have even been possible? No, that's a bad question. Do you think, you know what, I'm not going to edit this part out, screw it. When it comes to style, do you feel like you had a style before moving on to Lens Baby, or do you feel like you were just kind of hunting in the dark, and then when you found Lens Baby, it clicked for you? So
it's funny that you say that, because I didn't even think I had a style yet.
Oh, really? You definitely do. Yes.
Oh, okay. I remember asking, actually, in the Beginner Photography podcast Facebook group, about style, like early on. And I was like, how do you get there? Like, how do you develop your style? So I really searched for it at first, because I was like, I know that like I can get somewhere once I have a style. But yeah, I didn't think I did yet. Because I still
like right now, still to this day, you'd be like, I don't have a style.
Because the thing is, like, I love my Lens Baby photos, but I still would like to do other things too. Mm-hmm. Like recently, I've been learning more Photoshop, and to get my son more involved, I took a photo of him like making like a weird face, and I did a half tiger face for him in Photoshop, and I merged those together, and he just loved it so much. Yeah. So that got him excited about taking that photo. And then, so that's, you know, so different, but I'm still in that, like, I want to learn everything mode. And then I want to, explore more of like Photoshop and like how to paint in Photoshop. So like paint on top of my photos. I just don't have the time. I feel like I want to learn it all, but like I wish I had more time.
What do you hope? What do you hope to gain? Like, what do you hope at the end of this? Again, hold on. Let me rephrase this question. So, why? Like, what's the overall goal of you photographing your family in your everyday life?
Just to have the memories saved. So growing up in Poland, like we didn't have the best technology. So I have just a couple of black and white photos of my childhood. I don't want to get emotional over this, but I wish I had more. I don't have any like newborn photos of me. I have two older brothers, so like all the time and effort into photography was wasted on them. And then I guess my parents were like too busy to take photos of me when I was little. So like my first photos of like when I was like 5, and it's black and white. But like I cherish those photos. So just to have more for my kids and with me in them, because I have very little photos of like me and my mom, who is not alive anymore. So it's yeah, important for me to be in the photos with my kids too, and for them to have those memories.
So are you going to make the commitment to make more photo books?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, because my husband always says you have like thousands of photos like in the, you know, somewhere in the cloud or whatever it is. And then like that's just overwhelming for somebody to see one day. So
I think about that too. I was like, if something were to happen to me, how would I make sure that like these photos that I have will be taken care of or seen? Because it, you know, my father passed away when I was just a few months old, unfortunately. But all of the photos were kept in boxes, so it's like, here's the photos. Like we know where it is. Like it's in the closet. But now it's like the cloud. Like I don't know what that means. There's so many different services, and I'm always kind of in this mode of thinking like, how can I make sure that if something were to happen to me, that like all the photos would be safe or be accessible to my family. And I think that that's probably one of the reasons why I you know, at the end of every year try to make a yearbook for the family, which I just do it in Lightroom, which is pretty easy to do. Like the hardest part is actually compiling all the photos that you have, because you know you take so many at a time or whatever. But yeah, that's something that I think about often. So when it comes to keeping your photos safe on your computer, like what do you do?
I have an external hard drive, but then we have another like network drive. So I saved in those 2 places, which is probably still not enough, but I'm just hoping like nothing crashes.
Even if you have 9 places, I feel like that's still not enough. So yeah, there's always so much to do. Yeah, I get it. So what advice would you have? Like if you could go back in time and go back to, you know, Magda who got the camera day 1, and you could tell her like anything about photography, what advice would you give day 1 Magda?
Oh gosh. I definitely took the advice of taking photos every single day. So I wouldn't have to tell myself that. I guess just not to compare myself to others too much, because I definitely still do that. So I would still give myself that advice right now. And I definitely don't like believe in myself enough, because I'm like, people really like my photos, really? Yeah, that's about it. So from day 1, I was like that. But if I definitely learned that I should just keep on doing it because I love it, and that's all that matters.
What is it that you're doing with your photos? Would your friends and family be able to enjoy your photos if something happened to you? Always important to make your photos physical. All right, here I chat with Lewis Stevenson, talking about emotion and action in sports photography. When it comes to action sports, one thing that I always struggle with is that, like, obviously baseball, basketball, you can get the emotion, you can get that the excitement or the focus that you can get. When it comes to motorcycle racing, like, what is the shot?
For me, it's one of the shots. It's probably like one of the last shots I got that I sent you a photo of with the yellow motorcycle there in the front. and you can see two other motorcycles behind him. And it's all in the turn. They're at full lane, and they're just battling right there. The only other place you can show that sort of action solely is a panning shot, but it's still, if you get a pan with more than one bike in it, that's where it's really going to be at. But it's difficult because the angles you're getting, typically, if you want to fit more than one bike, you got to get them towards you got to be in front of the bike. So you're not panning at that point. So
why is that the shot? Like, why that one over any other composition or
because I think it shows the action going on, whereas everybody else, single rider photo, especially with the high frame rate, high shutter speed, you're just showing a person on a motorcycle. They could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas if you really want to show them on a track, you got to show them mid corner. And if you really want to show that they're racing, not just doing, riding around the track, then you got to get multiple riders in that same frame. And you can be wide angle and kind of show the same thing, but when you're up close, my favorite's when you got riders that have clear visors and you actually connect with their eyes, and you can see the intensity going on there. Whereas the reflective visors are really beautiful. They can make beautiful shots, but it's not the same as when you connect with somebody's eyes. Just like wedding photography or anything else, you got to connect with the person. So
was it the same with U Sports when it came time to taking that photo? Is the photo, quote unquote, one that has other players in it as well?
Yeah, with softball, and I never could grab one because I just wasn't in the right place, right time. I think the slide, when you get someone sliding into home or in any base and there's somebody trying to tag it out at the same time, that's really a great photo. Basketball, I got a couple jump shots with multiple people trying to block. Again, it's showing the actual action of the game. It is, otherwise, again, it could be just a solo player, and it doesn't really show that you're in a game. Otherwise, unless you have the other people involved. So
sure. So it sounds to me like context here in other players is one of the most important things that you can capture in some sort of action sports photograph.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it'd be like getting a wedding photo, but they're not in a wedding dress and they're by themselves.
Oh yeah, right. No, yeah. It doesn't really tell the story of a wedding.
There's no story
right there,
going on. Or even if they're just in a wedding dress by themselves, what's that? Is it actually at the wedding, or is it just somebody in their dress?
Fashion. So, right. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. That's perfect to think about. What's the process of delivering photos, I guess, for all sorts of action sports? Are you culling through the images and picking out the ones that you like best, or are you showing them all and then letting the rider
I'm culling
choose?
them. This is one of those interesting organic stories where I originally shot a half day of a race. I guess it's been almost 3 years ago now. The guy at the time was shooting all the club races, invited me out, and I shot lunchtime all afternoon. And at that time, what I ended up doing is just dumping them all to Flickr. And I had people thank me, but no, I didn't get anybody purchased anything. And then the U Sports thing came up, and from, everybody there's got numbers. And so I just immediately started tagging everybody with numbers and organizing. And I learned how to do that over, the 3 seasons. I did 2 basketball seasons and a softball season. And I learned how to do that, cull them and organize them and sort them into their own folders and then upload them to SmugMug. And in that time, and over those 3 seasons, and got it down fairly quickly. At first, it was taking me like a week, and I got it down to a few days. And then this year, I've been doing the same thing with the races, but now I'm doing a lot more photos. So
yeah, I would imagine that in volume shooting like that, where you get a bunch of photos in a row, that is probably one of the most time-consuming parts for you on the back end, is just figuring out like, okay, well, which shot is actually worth it.
You learn not to get precious with your photos, because you think you can save every one of them. It's like, it's not worth saving every one of them. You have 4,000 more photos to go through right now. You need to get through this. So that
Oh
one's
my
done.
gosh.
Yeah, you're just sitting there thinking like, yeah, it's good, but it's not great. And you got 2 days of photos. If you don't have one from that, then hopefully you get one next round. Is if you're saving all of them, then you have too many to deliver. And then also people are going to be seeing subpar work. So you just want to give the best you can every time. Sometimes it doesn't work. So you just, don't waste too much time trying to save something that's not worth saving. So
Don't waste your time trying to save a photo not worth saving. Lewis, oh man, it took me years to learn that in my own editing process. Such great advice, Lewis. Thank you so much. And to everybody today, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing everything that you have. Because honestly, I believe that the world is a better place when we share our knowledge, when we have that collective knowledge, when we can learn from others. Just because somebody has more experience doesn't mean that you can't learn from somebody who has less experience from you. Now, remember, if you took away something from this interview, everybody who you heard today is in the Beginner Photography Podcast community. So if you took away something from today's recap, don't be shy. Come on in, say thank you. I can tell you that they will really appreciate it. Now, these community spotlight interviews, I'm going to wrap this up here. To me, I feel like are truly a source of energy for me. I am the kind of person who would rather just kind of talk on the phone than send a text. So being able to see somebody's face virtually, sure, but not being behind a Facebook avatar and, just seeing a sentence or two of text is incredible. I don't know of any other words to describe it than that. It's just truly incredible. And I am honestly really looking forward to all of the community spotlight interviews that 2022 has to offer in the coming year, and exploring maybe even more options for ways to, encourage face-to-face communications. I don't know. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. Now that is it for this week. Until next week, I want you to keep shooting and please stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.